Coming up on Global Business, Chinese leader Xi Jinping wraps up his trip in Hanoi. We take a look at the e-commerce cooperation between China and Vietnam. Chinese banks extended $150 billion worth of new yuan loans in November, while money supply rose 10% from a year earlier, largely in line with expectations. And top Chinese policymakers vow to boost efforts to sustain the country's economic recovery in 2024, according to the annual Central Economic Work Conference. Hello, welcome to Global Business here on CGTN. I'm Zhu Junfeng in Beijing. First up, Chinese General Secretary Xi Jinping has concluded his visit to Vietnam and arrived back in Beijing. The trip has seen China and Vietnam agreeing to upgrade relations and be building a community with a shared future that carries strategic significance. Xi Jinping and his wife Peng Liyuan bid farewell to Vietnam as he wrapped up his state visit. Nguyen Phu Trong, General Secretary of Communist Party of Vietnam Central Committee, hailed Xi's visit as a complete success. During his visit, Xi Jinping met with Vietnamese leaders, including the President, Prime Minister and Chairman of the National Assembly. He also met with representatives from Vietnamese and Chinese youth groups. In a joint statement, the two countries said they plan to deepen cooperation in various fields and find a long-term solution to maritime issues. The e-commerce market in Vietnam has experienced significant growth in recent years. With a population of nearly 100 million and an increasing number of internet users, Vietnam is fast becoming the next battleground for e-commerce giants in the region. Mir Lu has more.
E-commerce is booming in Vietnam thanks to increased internet connectivity and rise in social media usage. Eager to bring their business to the next level, Vietnamese online sellers have been quick to jump on the bandwagon and learn from the best.
I watch a lot, also download Douyin. Yeah, Douyin in my phone. I watch live stream every day in Chinese. I'm trying to do the same, the new concept that Vietnamese don't do that before. I applied the Chinese in Vietnam. It's working very, very effectively.
Experts point out that one of the biggest drivers of the local e-commerce scene has been live streaming, especially the creation of TikTok Shop, which blends entertainment with online shopping.
There was, of course, social commerce or live commerce before. It existed in a, let's say, more informal way. But the way the company came, professionalized, institutionalized social commerce, for me, is significant, right? And we've seen it in Indonesia at a massive scale. We see it in Vietnam now.
Recognizing the market potential, Chinese e-commerce giant JD.com has built 2 smart logistics and warehouse spaces with more than 100,000 square meters in Vietnam.
We hope that through our accumulated supply chain experience in China, it can be applied to the Vietnamese market and accompany the high-quality development of enterprises. In just 1 year, the proportion of live stream orders has reached 65%.
It's no surprise that Hanoi's streets are now dotted with live streamers looking to cash in on the new trend.
After using TikTok video, our sales revenue has increased at least 4 to 5 times because it helped us reach many people, more than the traditional platform.
Experts say Vietnam will be the fastest growing market for e-commerce in Southeast Asia this year, with total revenue estimated to exceed $20 billion. We definitely see the energy here on the ground. KOLs, live streaming, young Vietnamese entrepreneurs are learning fast to satisfy the growing appetite of the country's aspirational middle class. Miro Lu for CGTN in Hanoi, Vietnam.
Vietnam has been China's biggest trading partner among the Association of Southeast Asian Nations since 2016, but people-to-people links between countries can have the biggest impact, as our reporter Zhang Shixuan found out by spending time at a Vietnamese chain restaurant in Shanghai.
A steaming bowl of rice noodles, topped with beef and veggies, covered with broth that's light yet at the same time full of flavors. It's called pho, a signature food from Vietnam, and it's gaining popularity recent years in China.
Probably the pho is my favorite. 就他们的 pho 嘛。
I like pho. The light flavor appeals to all ages.
是老少咸宜嘛。
In China, a nation with a rich noodle culture, the Vietnamese noodles have proved an unsurprising hit. This restaurant in downtown Shanghai has seen a constant stream of foodies alike, and they seem not just coming for the soup noodles.
可能有时候一个星期两。
I sometimes come twice a week. Sometimes I just come every day. I've tried fish cakes, green bean cake, rice paper rolls, and Vietnamese coffee.
冰咖啡吗？ Twice a month after the workout, I decided to get some, carb and some beef. It's very good for you. Probably this one. This one's my favorite because I'm from Zhejiang province. I like seafood a lot.
There are office workers from nearby office buildings, and there are also college students as well as families. For this store, located in a scenic spot, it also welcomes some travelers. We saw a flow of tourists from outside Shanghai in July and August this year.
This is just one of the 18 owned by the chain brand in China, which was established in 2015 right in Shanghai by Kevin Chu, who was born in Vietnam.
We were full from the beginning, so I think I ran out of food for 3 days after when I first opened. Initially, I targeted more of the younger, more internationally traveled crowd because I think there was a much broader acceptance than I thought. So even old people, China's opened up to the world, so there's a lot more people who recognize and are willing to try different foods. Even Thai restaurants carry like a huo che tou now. It actually was the reverse before. Before, it was Vietnamese food because it's not accepted as well. They would add Thai food. And they would add like everything just to try to get more acceptance.
When he opened his first store, Vietnamese restaurants were pretty new to many local people. But in recent years, a flourishing number of new eateries have opened. Lifestyle information service app Dianping now has thousands of results related to pho. The increasing appetite for Vietnamese food among Chinese consumers has secured a steady growth for these restaurant chains' business. But it's also boosted the business for suppliers from the Southeast Asian country.
The brand that we use for our noodles, The Factory, that makes it actually had a very large international market outside of China, but not in China. So, after finding and choosing like the brands that I like, Saigon Mama started using it. Their brand actually got more recognition in the supermarkets and everything else. So it kind of opened the market for a lot of Vietnamese brands that way. Brands from Vietnam, like they have a factory in Vietnam and they do exporting, but don't necessarily export to China because you need to have a market for it.
Kevin Chu says the company has kept its revenue growing every year. Just this year, it opened 9 projects across China. While his stores are mainly located in Beijing and Shanghai, he's planning for expansion into other major Tier 1 cities, including Shenzhen and Chengdu. The hope is that the ties between China and Vietnam can be long and nourishing, just like popular rice noodles. 张世璇, ICS for CGTN, Shanghai.
More discussion on China-Vietnam economic and trade relations. Let's bring in Zhou Mi, a senior research fellow at the Chinese Academy of International Trade and Economic Cooperation. Thanks for joining us, Mr. Zhou. How important is the China-Vietnam economic and trade relationship?
I think that this relationship is very important because it's providing both countries our second very important path for the cooperation. Like for China, we have the central and the western part of China. They want to have a better opening up. So they choose the new international, the corridors for cooperation. So they are connected with the countries on the peninsulas through Vietnam. And the second level, I would say that cooperation between our two countries facilitates the cooperation between China and Thailand and other ASEAN countries. That is very important because many of the goods through the customs between China and Vietnam. And the third one, I believe that the cooperation on both sides are helping the world to recover from the uncertainty from the pressures and challenges. So we are able to strengthen the global supply chains by the cooperation of both sides.
Yeah, our reporter just showcased Vietnamese opening Vietnamese restaurants in the Chinese mainland. Quite a lot of them actually here, very successful. What business opportunities are there in Vietnam for Chinese investors?
Actually, we see that Vietnam is also very open to the international practices like the CPTPP, the Comprehensive, the Progressive Trans-Pacific Partnership. So they are trying to do more, not only on the traditional ways, they are trying to have some better development on the digital economies. I think many of the Chinese companies are really good at that. And the second, I would believe that when the Vietnam are trying to change its trade and industrial pattern, it needs some kind of help to make a balanced improvement, and that is also provide many opportunities for the related service industries.
China's participating in Vietnam's infrastructure overhaul. What types of projects have Chinese companies been involved so far, and what potential is there for further collaboration?
I think that there are so many cooperation in the infrastructure in Vietnam, and many of the Chinese companies are going there to take part in the traditional ways in the transportation, in the logistics areas. And while we see that in recent years there are more cooperation on the new energy-related issues, and like the wind turbines and also some other solar panels power station, I would say that there are more cooperation that can benefit the trade between our two countries, including the rails and the highways, and that is also included the air transportation. So I believe that the infrastructure is one of the very potential areas, even for the information-related infrastructure.
Thank you so much. Actually, I have one more question. There have been reports of factories in China relocating to Vietnam. How much do we need to worry about this?
Actually, it's a kind of a concern that, about the transfer of the capabilities. But in my understanding, I would say the international transfer of the industries are always happened. So when we are not have more concerns about that, we are trying to provide a better support for the companies, for the market to make decisions, and trying to avoid some of the spillover of the side effects, like for some kind of environmental issues or other things to do with the supply chain. I believe that the cooperation is good for both countries and also for the region and the world.
Thank you for your insight, Mr. Zhou Mi from Chinese Academy of International Trade and Economic Cooperation. Moving on to the headlines we are tracking at this hour. Fitch Ratings said its outlook for China's economy in 2024 is neutral, although the country still faces headwinds from declining external demand. The agency also said China is likely to deploy policy support, especially fiscal support, to limit downside risks. Business confidence at big Japanese manufacturers hit a near two-year high in the 3 months to December, a central bank survey showed on Wednesday. Analysts said the figure represents a strong case for the Bank of Japan to stop its ultra-loose monetary policy. Britain's GDP fell by 0.3% from September, increasing the risk of recession. Economists said it may nudge the Bank of England a little closer to cutting rates. You're watching Global Business. Coming up next. Chinese banks extended 1.09 trillion yuan in new loans in November, while M2 money supply rose 10% from the earlier, both in line with expectations.
The world economy as we know it is about to change. Global business reports highlight emerging markets, developing countries, and dynamic sectors worldwide. We feature top analysts and newsmakers to provide perspectives on every facet of business. From an on-the-ground perspective, we provide you with balanced and objective assessments. Fast, sharp, and insightful. Global Business, only on CGTN.
The Chinese financial system maintained strong support for the real economy in November, according to fresh data released by China's central bank. Chinese banks extended 1.1 trillion yuan in new yuan loans, or roughly $150 billion in November, 137 billion yuan less compared with a year ago. New yuan loans in the first 11 months added up to about 22 trillion yuan. That's 1.6 trillion more than the same period last year. Total social financing, which measures the total amount of funds the real economy obtains from the entire financial system, amounted to 2.5 trillion yuan in November. That's 450 billion more than a year ago. Total social financing in the first 11 months totaled 34 trillion yuan. That's 2.8 trillion more than a year ago. In the meantime, broad M2 money supply rose 10% from a year earlier. Top Chinese policymakers have vowed to boost efforts to sustain the country's economic recovery in 2024, according to the annual Central Economic Work Conference. The meeting called for stronger confidence in China's long-term economic outlook, adding that more efforts should be made to pursue progress while ensuring stability. To further revive the economy, it urged the introduction of more policies to stabilize the expectations, growth and employment, as well as flexible and moderate policies. The meeting suggests the prioritization of 9 areas: strengthening sci-fi, innovation, expanding and domestic demand, deepening reforms, further opening up, risk prevention, supporting rural area, facilitating integral urban-rural development, promoting green development and improving people's livelihoods. Bolstering the growth of the private economy was emphasized at the annual Central Economic Work Conference. The National Development and Reform Commission said earlier this month that China's private sector would play a pivotal role to drive the economic recovery. In the first 10 months of this year, the imports and exports of private enterprises denominated in RMB rose 6.2% year-on-year. The growth rate surpasses the overall growth rate of more than 6 percentage points. During the first 3 quarters this year, approximately 7 million new private enterprises were established nationwide, up 15% from the previous year. By the end of September, the number of registered private companies exceeded 52 million, accounting for 92.3% of the total number of companies in the country. To spur healthy growth of the private economy, the NDRC, the country's top economic planner, has introduced 28 detailed measures, including tax cuts and streamlined bureaucratic process. Startups and private companies make up some of the leading innovators and entrepreneurial breakthroughs in China. As these companies face both domestic and international headwinds, localized financial policies aim to bolster support for them. Omar Khan reports.
Autonomous robotics, artificial intelligence, and advanced manufacturing, all under one roof of a company here in Guangzhou. For the past 38 years, Li Gong has transformed itself from focusing on traditional manufacturing to being a leader in cutting-edge technology, serving multiple clients in a variety of industries and sectors. Li Gong believes that the business and policy ecosystem they find themselves in has been a catalyst to not only their success, but other SMEs.
We feel the industry and IT environments in Guangzhou, alongside government departments, have provided a lot of support. One of the departments has a plan called the 4 Modernizations Platform for Empowering Enterprises. One of the goals is to have SMEs help other SMEs with digital transformation. In turn, there will be government subsidies provided to us. Another aspect of support is the municipal government takes SMEs to various universities for recruitment drives.
But with targeted policies facing off against continued economic turbulence, can the private sector play an even greater role?
I don't think there's any pressure. With the recognition of private enterprises in a country, we can succeed, and we've always been successful in the past. Facing future challenges, private companies have better vitality compared to large-scale companies. Our ability to remain flexible and make decisions are some of our key characteristics when it comes to changing environments.
Economists also recognize the tremendous potential of the entrepreneurial spirit in driving economic growth.
Private enterprises, they're fueling growth here in China. Do you think that's a direction we should be going in, or do you still think involvement from larger companies, especially SOEs, should play a major factor in China's economic development and growth?
The private economy is a backbone of the Chinese economy. There we're saying that the private economy contributes 50% of government tax revenues, 60% of the total GDP growth in China, 70% of innovative productions, 80% of the job employment, and 90% of the number of the company in China is private companies.
Many will view this year as the first to fully emerge from the shadow of the pandemic. Analysts will also be keen to see how the world's second largest economy plans to map out its future in 2024. Omar Khan, CGTN, Guangzhou.
Now I'd like to bring in Hong Hao, Chief Economist at Grow Investment Group. He joins us from Hong Kong. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Hong. November new yuan loans were up from October, but lower than expectations. What are the implications for China's economic recovery?
Yes, thanks for having me. I think the loan growth is still healthy, because towards the end you have a negative seasonality. Normally people borrow less at this time of the year. This time of the year is for the Chinese to repay their loans borrowed earlier in the year, right? So normally going into the end of the year, seasonality-wise, you just naturally borrow less. So I'm not too concerned about a slightly slower loan growth in the last quarter of the year.
Broad M2 money supply in November rose 10% from a year earlier, roughly in line with expectations, similar to the growth number in October. So policymakers seem to have no interest in flooding the market with liquidity. What's your take?
Yeah, I think at this juncture, it's probably better to assess the broader macro environment carefully before committed to easing or dramatically easing monetary policy. Reason being, the Federal Reserve is still pondering whether it can stop hiking the interest rate or even cut its interest rate. So, the interest rate differential between the two countries has been, one of the driving factors for the yuan currency. And as you know, the stability of the Chinese yuan, has been one of the focuses of discussions in the Economic World Conference. So I think, at this juncture, we'll probably pay to wait and see, what Federal Reserve is going to do. And also, if you look at the market interest rate and also the 10-year Chinese Treasury, rates has been going down. So what that means is that, the market has rather abundant liquidity. So it, in this juncture, it really pays to wait to see, what's going to happen in the international markets.
You said the market is rather full of liquidity. It's not short of liquidity, but the Central Economic Work Conference, the focus was on prudent rather than forceful monetary policy for 2024. It was announced. Some foreign investors have said they have expressed disappointment. Why do you think their disappointment that China didn't give any signs of big stimulus next year? Which one do you prefer, prudent or forceful policies? I think you just made very clear that you'd rather have prudent policy.
That's right, you're right. I think we would much prefer prudent policy, meaning in China, when you really turn on the spigot of liquidity, things tend to get out of control, right? So, people would take on the liquidity and start to speculate on asset markets and push up asset prices. I think for foreign investors and also in general for the market, obviously, it really want to have a large bazooka of stimulus so that, stock price and also other asset price would go up. As a natural consequence, they were always hoping for, very large stimulus. I think, the policymakers shouldn't be dictated by market actions. And I think in this juncture, we should make policy, from the standpoint of how best to grow the Chinese economy instead of how best to satisfy the market. So I think we're making the right choice here. Just pay to wait and see what's going to happen in the global markets.
Well said. The conference didn't offer any new ideas, but instead stuck to strategy previously mentioned in its key meetings, including the 20th National Congress of the CPC back in late 2022, promoting manufacturing, high-tech, consumption, all these opening up and using growth to deal with problems such as debt and employment. What's your take on this approach?
Yeah, I think it further emphasized on how best to use technology advancement to grow the economy, and also it emphasized on high quality growth. So I think the message has been rather consistent, and then this is a very sort of a fine-tuning from last year's strategy of growing to stabilize the economy. So I think going forward, technological development would be increasingly more important in the overall economic growth structure. And I think it's, in a sense that it's higher quality growth. So I think, people in the past has been obsessed, with growing fast, so that, you can gain a higher appreciation in the stock price and also maybe benefiting from the property price appreciation as well. But I think in a way, growing fast without, considering the cost and consequences actually sort of got us into a situation where, we have to deal right now. So I would say that at this juncture, higher quality growth is the key. And I think also at this juncture, quality is more important than speed.
Quality is more important than speed. Very well said. Thank you so much for joining us. As Mr. Hong Hao joined us from Hong Kong. Now, European aircraft maker Airbus expects the commercial aircraft services market to nearly double in value by 2042 as traffic rebounds in the post-pandemic era. The recovery of air travel and increasing passenger demand are expected to drive the demand for comprehensive aircraft services such as maintenance, repair, and overhaul. Zhu Zhu has more.
Airbus has recently published a global services forecast, which predicts a potential doubling of service demand in the next 2 decades due to the expected increase in traffic demand and aircraft replacement.
In the next 20 years, in the services markets, there will be more than 1,700,000 airplanes to be introduced in the total markets.
This suggests that there will continue to be significant demand for talent in the aviation services industry.
And in terms of the support to the growth, we need a lot of professionals, including the mechanics, the pilots, and the cabin crew, that we need a total 2.2 million people in this section. That 1/3 for mechanics and 1/3 for pilots and the rest for the cabin crews. So that's the global trends for the services markets.
The aviation industry is also embracing the trend of sustainability and environmental consciousness. It is projected that over the next 20 years, more than 17,000 aircraft will be replaced, creating opportunities for the industry to focus on reusing, repairing, and recycling aircraft components.
We have redesigned the new wing, and also we have adopted the new Trent 7000 engine, which is a new generation engine, brings 14% per seat lower fuel consumption compared with the previous 330.
The report from Airbus also predicts that the market value of the aviation service sector will double in the next 2 decades. China, South Asia, and the Middle East will be the fastest growing markets. Zhu Zhu, CGTN, Beijing.
With that, we'll wrap up this edition of Global Business. I'm Zhu Zhu in Beijing. Thanks for watching. CGTN continues with more news and views. Stay with us.